Today, we're diving into a fascinating paradox. We're looking at a country with some of the most powerful rivers in the world that somehow still struggles to keep the lights on for everyone. We're talking about Nepal, an energy giant that's been sleeping for over a century. Let's figure out why. To really get a sense of what we're dealing with, just look at this number. 83,000 megawatts. That's the theoretical hydropower potential just coursing through Nepal's rivers. It is a staggering amount of clean energy, enough to power the entire nation many, many times over and then export the rest to its neighbors. This one number, it's really the core of the whole story. But here's the thing. This story of immense potential didn't just pop up overnight. The journey to try and harness all this power has been a really long and winding road, one that started with just a few tiny sparks over 100 years ago.
Now, what's so interesting here is just how slow the start was. The first plan in 1911 was minuscule, really just for the ruling class, and then it took another 25 years just to get a second one built. Things only started to pick up after 1956 when planning became a bit more formal. But notice how fragmented everything was. You had different groups handling generation and transmission. It wasn't until 1985, almost 75 years after that very first spark, that the Nepal Electricity Authority, the NEA, was created to pull it all together. And that history of slow, disjointed steps is a huge piece of the puzzle for understanding the challenges they face today.
So that brings us to today. Let's get a much clearer picture of this giant's true size and just how much of its strength is still, waiting to be unleashed. This chart right here, it illustrates the paradox perfectly. On the left, that huge bar is the economically feasible potential, about 43,000 megawatts. And that's not just some dream, that's what experts say is realistically buildable. And then, look over on the right. That tiny little bar is what's actually been built, what's installed and running right now. That massive canyon between those two bars, that's the heart of Nepal's power problem.
So for the power they do have, where's it coming from? Well, over half of it, a full 55%, comes from private companies, what are called independent power producers. The state-owned NEA kicks in about a third. But get this last slice. 11% of Nepal's electricity is still imported from India. Think about that. A country sitting on a gold mine of water resources has to buy power from its neighbor. That really tells you so much about the challenges it's up against.
And yet, the crazy thing is, the future should be incredibly bright. On paper, Nepal has everything going for it. You've got the perfect geography, right? You've got growing demand at home thanks to urbanization and a shift to electric vehicles. And you have these massive export markets right next door. India has already agreed to buy 10,000 megawatts. The government has these ambitious targets, the private sector is champing at the bit, and big international institutions are ready to help fund it. All the pieces seem to be there.
Which brings us to the central conflict of this story. If the potential is so vast and the opportunities are so clear, what exactly are the chains holding this giant back? It's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's what everyone from investors to everyday citizens is asking. So let's break down the answer. If there's one single issue that defines the problem, it's this. Imagine building a massive, state-of-the-art factory, but then forgetting to build any roads to ship your products. That's pretty much what's happening in Nepal's power sector. Hydro plants get built, but there just aren't enough high-voltage transmission lines, the electricity highways, to get that power from the remote rivers to the cities and to the border. So you have all this power being generated with literally nowhere to go.
And it doesn't stop there. Beyond that one massive bottleneck, you've got a whole mountain of other hurdles. Financing is a big one. These projects are incredibly expensive, way beyond what local banks can handle. Then there's policy instability. When governments change frequently, so do the rules, and that makes long-term investors really, really nervous. Add to that some very real environmental concerns, the huge risks from natural disasters in the Himalayas, and the political headaches of cross-border trade. So the crucial point is, it's not just one problem, but this deeply tangled web of challenges.
Now, at the center of this whole web, there's one key organization that's tasked with managing all of it, the Nepal Electricity Authority, or NEA. You could say it's the giant's keeper.
So what is the NEA? Well, it was formed way back in 1985 as this single government-owned entity with a massive job. Manage, well, everything. The goal was to create an efficient, reliable power supply for the whole country by having one body oversee the entire process from start to finish. So, the NEA's job can be broken down into 4 key roles. First, it advises the government on energy policy. Second, it generates its own electricity.
Third, it transmits power across the country, and yep, this is where that whole bottleneck issue comes right back into play. And finally, it distributes that power to everyone, from factories to farms to family homes. It's supposed to handle the entire electricity life cycle.
And this image really connects that high-level role to what happens on the ground. The NEA isn't just some abstract government body. It's the organization that's building these massive dams, but it's also the one that employs the person who makes sure your lights turn on at home. It's at the heart of both the big vision and the day-to-day reality of power in Nepal.
So after a century of slow progress, facing both these incredible opportunities and some really daunting challenges, we come back to our main theme, waking the giant. What does the future actually hold?
At the end of the day, this whole story boils down to a stark contrast between two possible futures for Nepal. The promise is absolutely incredible. A clean energy superpower, driving its own development and earning billions from exports. But the reality for now is a nation struggling with infrastructure gridlock, unstable policies, and the constant threat of climate risks in one of the most vulnerable parts of the world.
And so that leaves us with the final big question. After more than 100 years, can Nepal finally untangle this web of challenges that's been holding it back? Can it build the highways for its electricity, stabilize its policies, and truly awaken the immense power that's sleeping in its rivers? The answer? Well, it's going to determine the future of the entire nation.